I love this topic so much. I engage in spiritual practices, have been for the last 25 years. And what I love about it for me is the relationship between myself and the divine. So if you want to look at it as your small self in relationship with your higher self, however you want to look at it, but it's that finite perspective of us, the human body, mind, in relationship with the infinite perspective of us. And what I love about it, and we'll see it as we go along, is that it's a dynamic relationship. My experience is that the divine is very interested in how we live our spiritual journey, and it's very engaged with us. So if we engage with it, it engages with us intensely. The difference between sort of my journey, however, and Muhammad's is that he was looking at the teaching for groups of people. It wasn't just for himself. So even as we're asking this question, we're asking this for ourselves. And one of the things, we've been very much on the Eastern tradition, and the Eastern tradition really praises a lot of the idea of a no self. And it's really when we get to the Western religions, with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, where there's a real value of the individual soul, that it is important. Our individual self is important. It's not just about merging into the infinite and letting go of every individual expression, but to actually say that that is the divine, and the divine is individuated. So as we're on our own journey, our own individuation, I think it's just we're taking it a little differently, in that it's not a whole religion, it's each of us individually, but I think the divine is working with us each and individually. So I'm asking, as we go through the 5 pillars, I'm going to invite you to look at this for your own life. My point is I'm not asking us to come to a collective decision here. Everyone in the lighthouse has to do this. Could you imagine? You'd all be out of here so fast. Yes, myself too. Yikes. Okay, so the first pillar is the creed. And I remember when I first read that, I'm like, the creed, yikes, here's what we believe. But what I love is it's only one line. The creed is, there is no God but Allah. There is no God but God. There is no, whatever words we use, there is no God but Allah. That is their ultimate answer and creed to everything. You're in a place of overwhelm. You have deadlines at work. You have bosses, colleagues, clients who are at you. You have this intensity around you. There is no God but God. That one statement puts us in right relationship with the entire universe. It reminds us of what's real. There is no God but Allah. Our emotional reactions to things tends to intensify the closer people are to us. So in our immediate relationships with family and friends, you might be emotionally triggered, and things might be going, and you stop yourself. There is no God but God. There is no God but Allah. It reorients us. What's real? What's the most real thing happening here? And so that's their creed. Isn't that beautiful? So the question to ourselves is, what would be a creed for ourselves? Do we have a statement or a belief or a feeling tone that reorients us, especially in times of overwhelm, but also in times of great enthusiasm? Because I was thinking the other challenge we have is our things we're attached to. Oh, this person is what is really making me happy, or everything's working right now. I have to repeat what I just did so I keep getting that same result, and we get attached to the external world. There is no God but God. There is no God but Allah. It reminds us that's just a moment. It's temporary. It's beautiful. This relationship is great. There is no God but God. It reorients us. So for us, I'm going to invite you to sort of look at what that is for yourself. As I was in that question, I recognized that it was the same time that I started these spiritual practices. I got very clear, this was 25 years ago, that the only reason why I was alive was God. And I recognized that that's my orienting concept. When everything else the only reason why I'm here is God. I get all worked up about this, that, or the other thing. The only reason why I'm on this planet is God. It takes the intensity of, I'm here to fulfill my desires. I'm here to get what I want, or I'm here to prevent this from happening. No, the only reason why I'm here is for God. So that reorients where my attention goes. Does my attention go to the world of effect? Does it go to the world of form, or does it go into the world of the invisible, which we can't see? It reorients us constantly away from effect to first cause. Or at least that's what it does for me. The only reason why I'm here is God. And what I recognize is when I first started doing all my spiritual practices, that was very present with me for years. It's not as present with me now, but it's still there. Like, I'm very clear that that's why I'm here. And one way to get to that ultimate creed for yourself is death. There's practices, maybe you've done them before, where you imagine yourself on your deathbed and really get to that place. I am now leaving this planet. I am now leaving my body. How do I want to have felt about my time on earth? And that, for me, that's where I got this. My time on earth, I want to be a vehicle of pure spirit. I want to express spirit. I want to know spirit. I want to be in love with spirit. I want to be true to spirit. I can't live up to it. I don't live up to it, but I know beyond a doubt that that's my ideal. So if you don't know what your ideal is, if you don't have a creed statement, imagine yourself on your deathbed and you're leaving. What ultimately is important about when you leave this body? Who do you want to have been? What do you want to have put your attention on? Where was your heart? What were you passionate about? What did you really care? What really ultimately matters to you? What is your creed? That could be one of your main structures for your spiritual journey, your life's path. What is your creed? So I just want you to take 1 second, and we're just going to listen. We're in that listening mode today. Just ask this love intelligence, what is my creed? And we stay open as we move on. All these questions that we ask in the visioning, that we'll ask during service, just stay open to them. Don't try to force any answers. They might come throughout the week, the next month, but just allow the questions are the opening. We don't want to force the answers. Sometimes they come immediately. Sometimes just having a minute to answer them, it comes right away. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it might come in a dream. It may come because you actually sit down and contemplate what it's like to die and who it's going to come in its way. Their second pillar for Islam, these all came through Muhammad, by the way, is prayer. Prayer 5 times a day. They place their rug and they face it towards Mecca, which is where Muhammad received the Quran, where he received this revelation of the Quran pouring through him. So they pray and they prostrate themselves, put their forehead to the ground, which is a beautiful expression of total surrender, fetal position, childlike innocence. I am nothing to the divine. This is a big practice, actually, in different, I think of especially Buddhism. Prostrating yourself is a big practice. It's beautiful, 5 times a day. How did this come about? I love this story, like the coolest story ever. It's has anyone read the story of how these 5 prayers came about? So they say that during one of the nights of Ramadan, Muhammad is taken on a white steed to Jerusalem, which is like the vortex, and through Jerusalem he goes up through the 7 heavens, and on the 7th heaven he meets God, and God tells Muhammad that the people need to be praying 50 times a day. So he starts his descension, and he's in 6th heaven, and there he meets Moses. And Moses says, oh, no. That's never going to work. There's no way people are going to pray 50 times a day. Go back and negotiate. I just think that's the best. So Muhammad goes back and he negotiates with God, and he gets it down to 40. And Moses says, no, that's still not going to work. So he does this 4 more times. He goes back and to negotiate with God, and they get down to 5. And Moses says, he goes, I've been with these people. This isn't going to work. People are not going to be praying 5 times a day. And Muhammad said, no, I think we can do. I think this one's reasonable. I'll surrender and submit to this one. And then he goes back to the world. I think that's hilarious. So, but I love the negotiation. Yes, that's what I love about it, is because that's been my experience. It is this constant dialogue. My experience, and I hate to say, but I think it is universal. I don't know, though, because I'm only one person, but it seems that my conversations with other people in terms of what our spiritual life is, when we are engaged, it seems to me, for me, Spirit's more engaged in that part of my life than any other part of my life. Like it answers me immediately. I'm in that question, and it wants me to be in relationship with the ultimate self. So the more I'm asking it questions, the more, and we do, when we negotiate, and that's why it changes over time. So this past week, so I write up my covenant July 4th. It's my covenant with the divine, and I do it every year. And it lets me know. I have to go back and forth, and what about this? I negotiate with it. I'm like, well, that's not going to work for me. That's just way too hard. Can we lower it down a little, the expectations? But it's like this loving presence, and it feeds me. I would say my spiritual practice is even the creating of the covenant, which goes on like a few weeks before, and a week afterwards, I'm still working on it. It feels like a holy and sacred time to me. I just feel that divine presence. I get a little disoriented sometimes because it is about going into another world. It is about saying what's the bigger picture and how am I going to anchor that in my life for this next year, and what's no longer serving me, where's the area that I need to grow in. And so it's constantly engaged. This has been going on for 25 years. So it's a constant engagement of growth, and it's so fulfilling. And I'm sharing my journey as well because when we look at one of the things we are opening to is recognizing that it's not just other people who have these experiences with the divine. It's not just Muhammad who has this relationship with the divine. Every one of us has this relationship with the divine. Every one of us is having our holy, sacred experience of how we're to live our life. And we can listen to that and follow that as individuals. And we are just as important to the divine presence as Muhammad was, as Moses was, as Jesus was, as whoever your main teachers are. We are just as important, and we don't need intermediaries. That's a basic principle of our teaching, that we don't need intermediaries, that the divine presence is within us, and we can engage. And it matters to the divine. The one thing I really, really know is that it matters to the divine, this relationship that we are in. And because our spiritual practices, these pillars, are how we are in our life activating and saying the divine is more important to us than anything else, that we recognize that the ultimate is the divine. So he put it prayer 5 times a day. It's just so beautiful. I was working in a hospital. I was doing Zen meditation at the time, so I went into the chapel doing my meditation practice. There was a woman there who was doing her rosary, and then a Muslim came in, and they put their rug down, and they're doing their prayer. And I just thought, this is heaven. Just to be in a room, and we're all doing our own individual practices, but it's all accepted, and we're all one. And to me, this is the ideal of where we can all live together as one. One of the things I loved when I was at Agape was that there was a whole group after service who would go to Siddha Yoga. There was a Buddhist monk who would do his services and then come to Agape. I would go to self-realization. There was a big Jewish group. In fact, Reverend Michael was on the cover of the Jewish Times because he was returning so many people to Judaism. That within this one community, all these different practices were being experienced and felt, and that just feels like heaven to me. That's what heaven is, because it isn't about the practice. There is no God but God. Spiritual practices, these pillars are to anchor that creed, there is no God but God, but we can never forget there is no God but God. So all these religions, all these practices, all these things that we do are the ways we get to be in relationship with the divine, but there is no God but God. And when we're all in together doing our spiritual practices and having our own paths, yet we recognize as we're all doing our own paths, we're all in the same room with our different unique paths, there is no God but God. There's no other than the one. However that wording is for you. There's nothing else but this thing itself. There's nothing else. There's nothing but that. It's heaven. Isn't that heaven? I look at the prayers, the 5 prayers, as my spiritual practices. So it may not just be prayer for you. It may also be meditation. It might be your spiritual reading. It might be Tai Chi or Qigong or exercise. It may be, emotional work that you're doing, dream work, psychological work. Those are all aspects of, I actually think we have physical teachers, emotional teachers, mental teachers, and spiritual teachers that we're always working on all levels. So for me, that prayer entails not just prayer, that their pillar of prayer is, to me, spiritual practices. But even if we just look at prayer, imagine if you just committed to praying doing it, for those of you who pray in affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, doing that 5 times a day, full 5 steps, no matter what. You're going to sit down and do a treatment. That is powerful. I mean, what an incredible gift to give yourself. So whatever your spiritual practice is, that commitment to say, I'm going to do that every day. By the way, it's not binding, it's not strict. They have times of day to do the 5 prayers, and they recognize people of their schedules, and they also say, don't do it if you're around disbelievers who may hurt you. So there's a generosity. You're not supposed to do it come hell or high water. It's just like we have 3 meals a day. We all generally eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner around the same time. People generally brush their teeth at the beginning and at the end. That's the same with these prayers. There's these general times that people basically do these prayers. And here's the difference about doing it individually versus collectively. And we'll get to this down the line as well. But they say even if you're doing it by yourself, it's like eating your lunch by yourself. You know everyone else is eating their lunch around the same time. The same thing is with the prayers, that even if you're doing the prayer by yourself, you know Muslims all over the world are praying at the exact same time. Isn't that beautiful? Gets to me. So that commitment of that collective energy, that you can still have your individual way of doing it, but at the same time you're connecting with people all over the world who are also on their rugs, bowing and praying to Allah, facing Mecca. That's the second pillar. So let's just take a second and just ask ourselves, what does that look like for us? What is our daily? Can we pray 50 times? 5 times? What do our spiritual practices look like? Just take a moment to ask that question of the love intelligence within. What is my daily spiritual practice that I can commit to? We continue to stay open as these questions are always staying open as we move into the third pillar. The third pillar is giving alms, charity. The Muslim tradition the Islamic tradition is a little different than Judeo-Christian tradition. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, there is an essence of tithing 10% to a spiritual source. It originates from the Old Testament. Abraham, the first writing of it is Abraham tithing to Melchizedek, who is, in essence, his spiritual teacher. So he's giving his fruits to Melchizedek. And there's different it only comes in the Bible, I think, 2 or 3 times, but we really hold on to that. In the Islamic tradition, you give 2.5%. So it's significantly less, but it's interesting. It's 2.5% of everything you possess. So 2.5% of the value of your house, 2.5% of your car, of your yacht, or whatever. It's 2.5% of everything every year. So it's not like you can just do it once. Every year you give 2.5% of everything, and you give it to those who are in need. It's not directed towards religious organization. It's directed towards people who are in debt and can't pay their debts back. They're people who are to charities and nonprofits, people who are in need. The recognition being that that this world is an uneven world, and so for those who have, part of the practice is to give to those who don't have. There's a wonderful story, I put it on my Facebook yesterday, of the Muslim community in Tampa Bay. Did anyone happen to see this video? You saw it? They have, the whole Muslim community in Tampa Bay has said, you know what? We're concerned about these 2,300 children who have been separated and are living in detention centers under not nice conditions. We will pay for all of them, all 2,300, to come to Tampa Bay. We have homes for them. There's babies, 8 months old. Every age, we think they should be nurtured and cared for. Until they can be reunited with their family, we are here to take care of them. We will foot the whole bill. Their trips here. We have everyone in our community. We have enough families who have committed to take these children into their homes and care for them and love them and nurture them until they can be reunited with their parents. The government doesn't have to pay a cent. We will give all our money to these children. It's part of their pillar, 5 pillars of Islam. Isn't that beautiful? I think this teaching is so beautiful. These 5 pillars just get to my heart. So that is what it looks like in action, to give to those who need and to live it. If you want to see the video of the person offering it, it's on my Facebook page. So as we look at ourselves, what is it for us to give? Where is our heart to give? Where are we being called to give? And again, I don't think this is about following rules. I personally give to my spiritual source, but that's not because it was a rule given to a Bible. It's, again, been negotiated over many years between me and Spirit about where this money goes, how much money, where it goes, how it goes. And again, it's very, very involved. I'm amazed how much Spirit is involved in this. Last week, which was the week before July 4th, during service, completely having nothing to do with service, it was just coming so intensely who I needed to be tithing to. And then all day long, throughout the day, it's like this is, and I'm like, I wasn't asking, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was thinking about other things, but it just was like, it was very clear, this is where your money's going, this is where your tithe's going, this is how much money you're giving, and blah, blah, blah. And that's what we want to be engaged in with these 5 pillars. It's not about what does so-and-so say I should be doing. It's always, what is that spirit? We are the CEOs of our spiritual journey, of our 5 pillars of journey. If we believe, as I believe everyone here, is that we're not here just to take, but to give, to share our good, that what does that look like for us? How does the divine want to share our good through us? And that's between you and the divine. It's not between you and anybody else, but you and the divine. Because this is, again, all of this is about your relationship with the infinite love intelligence. All 5 pillars are about your relationship with the divine presence within you. And it's not your partner's business, it's not your children's business, it's not your family's business, it's not your church's business, it's no one else's business but you and the divine. So I just want us to ask now, take a moment to say, what does almsgiving look like, that givingness of our financial good? What does that look like for me? Just let's be in that question. This love intelligence. What does that look like for me? Continue to stay open to these questions, almsgiving. We give thanks as any answers are coming for any of these questions. We give thanks for the question itself. And we go into the 4th pillar. The 4th pillar is Ramadan. Probably most of you have heard about Ramadan. We just had the Islamic religion just had Ramadan. And it's a fast for 1 month. They go by the lunar calendar, so it moves around the calendar every year. It's at a different time. It's harder at the summertime because it means no eating, not even drinking for all daylight hours from dawn to dusk. So the summer hours, that's a lot longer time than if it's in December, the shortest time. I was reading an article for this last time, and they were saying more Muslims follow Ramadan than anything else. Somehow it's like this month where they all come back together. For me, I was thinking, I don't know, but I was just thinking, that's kind of like Christmas. There's a lot of people who don't really practice the Christian religion, but come Christmas, the tree goes up and all the happenings happen. That it's a realignment, it's a reminder of who you are. The idea of fasting is to develop self-control, to develop compassion, that if you're not eating and you know the feeling of hunger, it reminds you to have compassion for those who feel hunger all the time, not just 1 month. And again, it's about building that relationship with the divine during this period. I know other people have had this experience. I've had the experience of I didn't have the experience during Ramadan, but they invited, there was an Islamic, my neighbors were Muslim, and they invited me to participate in the celebration at the last day of Ramadan, and it was the most delightful, warm. They had beautiful Persian rugs in their backyard with tents and the lights and the dancing and the music, and they all spoke another language. I didn't even know what they were saying, and they didn't know what I was saying very well, but I was completely welcome. The children were always hugging me, and they were so warm and embracing, and then afterwards, all the food afterwards. It's this beautiful warmth, community connection. So looking at that again in our life as a pillar, what it is taking a special time and saying, 1 month out of the year, I'm going to do something completely different for the divine. Everything is done for the divine. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, there's Sabbath. For the Jewish tradition, it's Friday to Saturday, Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. For Christians, it generally has been on Sundays. And the idea, as Jesus said, Sabbath was made for people, not people for Sabbath. That the idea is to give us rest. The idea was to pull us away from the world for a day or a month in terms of Ramadan. It's retreats. It's to pull away on a regular basis, to just relax, to rejuvenate in pure spirit, to remember who we are, to let go. So the question today, and your own pillar, is what does that look like for me? Would I be interested in my spiritual journey to start committing to a month of something, of changing my behavior, of fasting? By the way, fasting is pretty consistent through every tradition, which I find fascinating. Every world tradition has some sort of fasting involved. So even fasting, is that something that I would want to incorporate in my 5 pillars? Is I had a colleague who really started practicing having a Sabbath day in a really clear, definite way, and how much that impacted her whole life, just taking that day off. I know in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey definitely advocates for taking a day off. He calls it sharpening the saw, and in fact, you become more efficient if you take that. You are just absolutely clear, this is my day, where I do not participate in the outer world. So for you, is there a day for fasting, a month, a week, a year? You might say every year I go off for a week on a retreat, a month or a day, once a week. I mean, that's abundant, 1 day a whole week, every week. Or even a day a week where you do fasting. What does that look like for me? What is that sort of retreat from the world, from the normal routine of the world, to be with my divine beloved, to be in the love intelligence of the universe, to be with who I really am? So we just turn within and just ask ourselves that question: what does something like Ramadan look like on my own journey? What is the timing, fasting? What would that look like, and could I commit to that? And as we just continue to stay open and allowing this divine love intelligence, who is so glad we're asking these questions, it is so happy that you're interested and you care. We're going to the last pillar, which is the pilgrimage. Pilgrimage is to Mecca. Muslims are expected, if they can afford it, to make one trip in their lifetime to Mecca. Mecca, again, is where Muhammad received the divine channeling, incantation of the Quran, resuscitation of the Quran. And so it's so beautiful. So Muslims all over the world make this trip. And when you go, you let go of whatever your clothes are, your regular dress, and you wear 2 white sheets. And the idea is that equalizes everybody. No matter who you are, no matter how rich, poor, doesn't matter. Everyone wears, male, female, where country you come from, everyone wears the 2 white sheets as you get to Mecca and you make this pilgrimage. For me, I don't think I really understood the power of it until I saw performance, or not a performance, a version of it in the movie Malcolm X. Has anyone seen the movie Malcolm X? You have to see Malcolm X. We're doing Islam. It's such a great movie. And Denzel Washington plays Malcolm X. And he was a man so ahead of his times. What he saw was wrong. He was saying it clearly, and it was scary for people because truth sometimes is scary. And he was converted to Islam while he was in prison. And at some point on his journey, after he's already a leader, powerful leader, doing great things, and then he makes this trip to Mecca. And that's when you get how powerful it is, how equalizing it is. And what Houston Smith says in his book about how people from all these different countries start to have compassion and understand people from other countries. And that's what I saw in the film. I wasn't there, so I don't know, but what was depicted in this film was just Malcolm X's heart just opening, just softening and opening, and how he continued to speak, but with such an incredible softness that he didn't have before, because going to Mecca changed him so deeply and profoundly, spiritually. And so the question I started asking myself is, what does pilgrimage look like in our life? Do we have places that we hold as holy ground? And that's when I started to think about the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, because I was thinking if you have a Tai Chi teacher or a Qigong teacher, you might want to feel called to go to a pilgrimage to where they were. You might have a place where you've had revelations and insights, and that's a holy spot for you. There might be... for Sri Aurobindo is a mental teacher for me, not as much spiritual as mental. And for my teachers, Ernest Holmes loved Sri Aurobindo, Ken Wilber loved Sri Aurobindo. So much of how I understand the world mentally comes from Sri Aurobindo. And I remember I was at the mall, and I was just sitting there reading his interpretation of the Gita, just thinking, being with him. And then I went into a calendar store, and I started talking to the guy, and I don't know how this happened, but somehow it turns out he was a devotee of Sri Aurobindo, and was from Pondicherry, which is Sri Aurobindo, and he started telling me all about Pondicherry, and I'm like, oh, I want to go to Pondicherry, that would be so amazing. And so it's like that could be a pilgrimage for me, because it just feels like there's calling just to go where Sri Aurobindo was. People feel called to go to Jerusalem or Bethlehem. I love Grand Junction, Colorado. I used to go off, they had all this land, and I would go into this rock formation, and I would meditate. It was just land, and it has such a high vibration. So even after I left there, when I would do visioning, I didn't try to. I would just suddenly be back on that rock formation. And right before I got how my ministry was supposed to look, I went down into the formation. All my teachers were underground, this rock formation, and we were all meditating around a fire. And then suddenly from that, just being in that energy, and then I went into the formless. But it was all around this vortex of energy that I experienced on this rock formation. So that would be a great pilgrimage for me, except for I think they've made it into a golf course now. So isn't that sad? It breaks my heart. I guess golfers don't think it's sad, but... So do you have a place, because it's the idea is that the journey itself, getting the finances, the logistics, how to get there, what clothes would I wear? Just really holding it as a sacred and holy place. And this is what I'm doing for my divine beloved. And again, they only ask you to do it once a lifetime. So is there a place that you hold so... Like, I would like to go to Pondicherry, but that's not the place. So I was just... that's a place where I'm still very much in the question, because I would love to go on a pilgrimage. Just don't know where it is yet. So just being with that. Where is that holy and sacred pilgrimage that... And we could say it's an internal journey, but we're already doing the internal journey with our prayer and spiritual practices. It's taking it outward. Is there a spiritual journey? Is there a pilgrimage, a holy, sacred place for myself, for my teachers, for my tradition, for something that I feel in my lifetime I really need to go as a homage, as a bowing down. It's another form of bowing down to the divine beloved, to the divine love intelligence within me. So what would be a place of pilgrimage in my own heart? We turn within and we just ask that question. What's a place that might be a pilgrimage for my spiritual journey? It's an outward depiction of my inner state of being. that might open my heart up, where the walls can dissolve, where I could see more clearly after this pilgrimage than before the pilgrimage. And we stay open with that. So those are the 5 pillars, which your creed, your prayer life, spiritual practice, alms, giving, Sabbath, Ramadan, retreat, fasting, and pilgrimage. A pilgrimage of our heart and our soul and our spirit. All of these are to anchor our spiritual life in pure spirit. Spirit cares. Spirit is so happy that we're asking these questions today, and then as we go forth into our day, into the week, it's going to engage with us. If we are listening, and we get to negotiate, that's why I love that story. Negotiate with Spirit. You might be totally like what you receive. I'm like, yep, I'm right there. But other times, I'm not sure. We're allowed to have a voice. I think sometimes we get so like, I can't have a voice. I have to do exactly what I'm told. No, we get a voice. There is this wonderful engagement. And I actually find that's what makes Spirit more alive in me. Makes it more intimate, makes it more personal, makes it more loving. It is the time every day where I am the happiest. There is no question. When I am living my spiritual practices, when I'm living my spiritual journey, is when I am easily the most fulfilled in my life every single day. And that's what motivates me. Not because I have to, not because someone tells me I have to, but because it is the greatest source of joy and love that words can't describe. So I invite us all to stay in those questions as we honor the 5 pillars in Islam, and just amazing that an entire tradition and religion has these 5 pillars for each of the individuals. I mean, how beautiful is that? And that if you're Muslim, you're committed to these 5 pillars and these 5 ways of being. I just find it so moving. It's just a beautiful thing. Okay, so I'm just going to end with our reading that we had earlier, and then we'll go into prayer. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet come again. Come, come. Love means to reach for the sky, and with every breath to tear 100 veils. Love means to step away from the ego, to open the eyes of inner vision, and not take the world so seriously. Shut your eyes so the heart may become your eye, and with that vision, look upon another world. And how grateful I am that we are giving our precious attention to this divine presence within us. We're giving our love and our heart and our body and our mind and our soul to this infinite love intelligence of the universe, which so many on this planet call Allah. And we feel that love of Allah, our devotion to it, our relationship with it, the intimacy with it, recognizing that there is only one, and it is within each and every one of us, even now. And that we are always in relationship with it, and it is always in relationship with us. And that this relationship is heaven itself. This wonderful relationship is heaven itself. And every time we stand in alignment with our 5 structures, with our structures of our spiritual life, our spiritual practices, the way we choose to live our life day in and day out, when we live in alignment with our divine self, we know joy beyond anything this world could ever give us. We know a love that is more intimate, more passionate, and more fulfilling than anything in this world could ever give us. It is absolutely free. It is unlimited. It doesn't come and it doesn't go. It is unconditional in its love and its acceptance of all that we are. It is a place of harmony and grace and peace. It is abundance. It is beauty. And this is what we are in relationship with right now. It's that wonderful paradox. Not 2, but not 1. And we are this beautiful, loving paradox, living heaven and earth, human and divine, finite and infinite, alive and in love in this beautiful dance. In this beautiful dance, not a war, but a dance. And even as we are in this wonderful dance with our own interior world, we are in a dance with this world exterior to us. There are no battles to be fought, but only love and understanding and compassion to be lived and expressed and experienced. For there is only God. There is no God but God. There is no God but Allah. We hold in our heart the ultimate creed of our hearts, the ultimate truth, and we allow it to reorient ourselves day after day, week after week, year after year. The ultimate truth. There is only love. There is no love but love. There is no love but unconditional love. Unlimited, unbounded, oceanic, ever-present love. There is no love but God's love. Divine love. And how grateful I am that we know this, we are steeped in it, we feel it with every fiber of our being, and we walk in it. And for the grace of this service, for the grace of love, revealing its truth as each and every one of us, knowing that our own needs are being met even now through this inquiry, through asking these questions, we are opening and seeing and knowing and feeling in ways we've never felt before. We're allowing new ways of being and seeing to enter into us, and we are fulfilled, and we walk into the rest of our day open and available to all our conversations and actions and choices, that this divine love intelligence has been welcomed into our heart and into our soul as never before, and we see it in everything that we do today. We are immersed in this love. We feel this love in every conversation, in every action, in every activity that infuses today is this love. Love has been welcomed in, and we are forever new. Thank you, Allah. Thank you, Divine One. Thank you. We release this word into the law of life, knowing that as we have said this and prayed this together, it truly is already done. And I invite us all to say together, and so it is. Amen.